Picture this. It's Saturday morning, 1985. You wake up at 6:30, not because you have to, but because you want to. The TV is calling you. There's a bowl of sugary cereal waiting, something with marshmallows and a cartoon character on the box. You're wearing your favorite pajamas, the ones with He-Man or Rainbow Bright on them. And for the next 4 hours, you're going to sit cross-legged on the carpet, 3 feet from the television screen, watching cartoons that will never be this good again. There's no internet. No smartphones. No social media. No helicopter parents tracking your every move. The 1980s were a different world, a world where kids had freedom that would terrify modern parents. A world where boredom was something you had to solve yourself. A world where "be home when the streetlights come on" was the only rule you needed. If you grew up in the 80s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you didn't, buckle up, because you're about to discover what childhood looked like in the last great decade before technology changed everything. I'm your host, and today we're counting down 10 things that every American kid did in the 1980s. Some of these will make you nostalgic. Some will make you cringe. And some will make you wonder how any of us survived to adulthood. Let's rewind the cassette tape and head back to 1980. Let's start with the most sacred ritual of 1980s childhood: Saturday morning cartoons. Today's kids can watch whatever they want, whenever they want, on a dozen different streaming platforms. But in the 80s? Saturday morning was it. This was your one chance each week to watch quality cartoons, and you did not waste it. You'd wake up before dawn, no alarm needed. Your internal clock knew it was Saturday. You tiptoed downstairs, trying not to wake your parents, and claim your spot in front of the TV. The carpet had a permanent indentation from where you sat every week. The lineup was legendary. Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, She-Ra, Thundercats, the Smurfs. Scooby-Doo was still going strong. And if you were really lucky, you caught Muppet Babies or DuckTales later in the morning. But here's what made it special: the shared experience. On Monday morning at school, everyone had watched the same shows. You'd debate whether Optimus Prime could beat He-Man in a fight. You'd argue about which Thundercat was the coolest. These cartoons weren't just entertainment, they were cultural currency. And the commercials. Oh, the commercials. Every ad was for a toy you desperately needed. Transformers that actually transformed. G.I. Joe vehicles with real moving parts. Easy bake ovens. Light Brights. Cabbage Patch Kids. By the end of Saturday morning, you'd mentally written your entire Christmas list. The shows ended around 11 or noon, and suddenly you were dumped back into reality. The cartoons were over for another week. There were no reruns on demand. No YouTube clips. If you missed an episode, you missed it forever. That scarcity made every Saturday morning feel like an event. Kids today will never understand the pure joy of Saturday morning cartoons. Or the deep betrayal you felt when your parents made you go somewhere on a Saturday morning and you miss your shows. That was a wound that took days to heal. Here's something that would get parents arrested today. In the 1980s, kids as young as 6 or 7 rode their bikes all over the neighborhood, completely unsupervised, for hours at a time. Your bike was your freedom machine. It was your car, your escape pod, your ticket to adventure. And your parents' only rule was, be home before dark. That was it. No cell phones to track your location. No GPS devices. No checking in every hour. You just went. You rode to your friend's house 3 streets over. You biked to the convenience store for candy. You explored construction sites and empty lots. You built bike ramps out of plywood and jumped over garbage cans. The bikes themselves were magnificent. BMX bikes with banana seats and high handlebars. 10 speeds with multiple gears that you never quite figured out how to use properly. And if you were really cool, you had pegs on your back wheels so friends could ride standing up behind you. A practice that was definitely not safe but was definitely awesome. You customized your bike like it was a hot rod. Baseball cards in the spokes made that perfect clicking sound. Streamers on the handlebars. Reflectors everywhere. Maybe a horn or a bell. Some kids had those orange flags on long poles, ostensibly for safety, but really just to look cool. And the crashes. Oh, the crashes. Every kid had scars from bike accidents. Road rash on your knees and elbows was a badge of honor. You'd crash, lie there for a second taking inventory of your injuries, then get back on and keep riding. Your parents would patch you up later, but it rarely occurred to anyone to, maybe not do the dangerous thing that just resulted in injury. The bike gave you a radius of about 2 miles from home. Within that radius, you were basically unsupervised. Parents didn't know where you were or what you were doing. They just trusted that you'd figure it out and come home eventually. And you know what? You did. You learned navigation. You learned problem solving. You learned to assess risk. You learned that if you broke your friend's toy, you had to face the consequences without your parents there to mediate. Could kids today handle that level of freedom? Probably. Would parents today allow it? Absolutely not. The 1980s were the last gasp of the free-range childhood, and those of us who lived it are grateful we did. Let me explain something to younger listeners that's going to sound like science fiction. There was a time when phones were attached to walls and you had to memorize everyone's phone number. In the 1980s, communication required effort. If you wanted to call your friend, you picked up your home phone, which was connected to the wall with a cord, and you dialed their number. Not from a contact list. From memory. Every kid knew their own number, their best friend's number, their grandparents' number, and maybe 3 or 4 others. These numbers were burned into your brain. Even today, people who grew up in the 80s can still rattle off phone numbers they haven't called in 30 years. But here's where it gets interesting. What if you weren't home? What if you were at the mall or the arcade and needed to call your parents? Payphones. Payphones were everywhere in the 80s. Outside convenience stores, in shopping malls, at gas stations. They cost a quarter to make a call. And if you didn't have a quarter, you were out of luck. Kids learned to master the payphone. You'd call home collect, and when the operator asked for your name, you'd say something like, "Mom picked me up at the mall," really fast, and then your mom would decline the charges but she'd gotten the message. This was considered genius-level problem solving. Or you'd use the old trick of calling your home number, letting it ring once, then hanging up. 1 ring meant, "I'm okay." 2 rings meant, "Come get me." 3 rings meant, "Emergency." Your family had codes. The lack of instant communication meant you had to plan. If you were meeting friends at the mall, you agreed on a specific time and location. 3 o'clock by the fountain. And if someone was late? You waited. You couldn't text them. You couldn't call. You just waited and hoped they'd show up. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes plans fell apart because someone missed someone else by 5 minutes, and there was no way to coordinate. And you know what? It was fine. You dealt with it. You made new plans. You adapted. The anxiety that comes with being unreachable didn't exist. Your parents couldn't call you every 5 minutes to check in. You couldn't obsessively check your phone for messages. You were just present. In the moment. Doing whatever you were doing. And memorizing phone numbers? That skill trained your brain in ways that modern kids will never experience. You couldn't rely on a device to remember for you. You had to use your actual memory. It was mental exercise disguised as daily life. The payphone and the memorized phone number. Two artifacts of the 80s that seem quaint now but were essential survival skills then. Kids today have Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, unlimited access to virtually every song ever recorded. Kids in the 1980s? They had the radio. And if you wanted to own a song, you had to work for it. Here's how it worked. You'd sit by your stereo with a blank cassette tape loaded and ready. You'd listen to your favorite radio station, C100 or your local top 40 station, waiting for them to play the song you wanted. Could be minutes. Could be hours. You waited. When the DJ announced the song, you'd slam down the record button. And then you'd sit there, perfectly still, holding your breath, praying that nobody in your house would make a sound. Because if your little brother started yelling, or your mom called you for dinner, or a dog barked, that sound was now permanently on your recording. You'd have Madonna's "Like a Virgin" with your dad sneezing in the background. The goal was to start recording right when the song began and stop right when it ended, before the DJ started talking. This required lightning reflexes and intense concentration. If you successfully recorded a clean version of your favorite song, without the DJ's voice or any background noise, you felt like a recording engineer. You'd make mixtapes, compilation tapes of your favorite songs, carefully curated and ordered. Making a mixtape for someone was a big deal. It was art. You'd agonize over the song order. You'd design a cover for the cassette case. If you made someone a mixtape, it meant something. It might have been the most romantic gesture of the decade. And cassette tapes themselves were their own adventure. They'd get tangled. The magnetic tape would stretch or break. You'd have to use a pencil to wind the tape back into the cassette. Every kid knew this trick. You'd have shoeboxes full of tapes, each one carefully labeled in your best handwriting. There was no shuffle play. No skipping to your favorite song instantly. If you wanted to hear track 8, you had to fast forward, guessing where to stop, overshooting, rewinding, trying again. It was a physical workout just to listen to music. But that effort made the music more valuable. When you worked that hard to record a song, you listened to it more carefully. You appreciated it more. It wasn't disposable background noise. It was treasure you'd captured from the airwaves through skill and patience. The kids who mastered the art of recording off the radio were the cool kids. They had the best mixtapes. They knew when each station played the hits. They were the music curators of the pre-digital age. Before gaming consoles were in every home, before online gaming, before smartphones, there was the arcade. And in the 1980s, the arcade was the center of the kid universe. Every mall, every bowling alley, every pizza place had at least a few arcade machines. But the real arcades, the dedicated gaming palaces, were something special. Dark rooms filled with the glow of dozens of screens, the cacophony of sound effects and music blending into a symphony of electronic noise, the smell of popcorn and teenage body odor mixing in the air. You'd walk in with a pocket full of quarters, your allowance converted into gaming currency. Each game cost 25 cents. That bought you one life, one chance. And when you died, you had seconds to decide, pump in another quarter or walk away. The games were brutal. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Galaga, Defender, Space Invaders in the early 80s. Then came the Golden Age, Street Fighter II, Mortal Kombat, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Simpsons, X-Men. These games were designed to eat your quarters. They got harder and harder until you died, forcing you to pay again. But the arcade wasn't just about the games. It was social. You'd watch other kids play, learning strategies, waiting for your turn. There was an unwritten rule. If someone put their quarter on the machine, that was their way of calling next game. You'd see a row of quarters lined up on the edge of a popular machine, like a queue made of money. The best players were celebrities. There was always that one kid who could beat Street Fighter II with one quarter, executing perfect combos, knowing every character's moves. Crowds would gather to watch. Being good at arcade games gave you status. It was respect you couldn't buy, you had to earn it through skill. And then there were the ticket games. Skee-ball was king. You'd roll those wooden balls up the ramp, trying to land them in the highest point holes, winning tickets that poured out of the machine like a paper waterfall. The tickets could be redeemed for prizes, cheap toys, plastic rings, oversized pencils. The good prizes required thousands of tickets. You'd spend $20 in quarters to win a plastic spider ring worth 50 cents. And you'd be thrilled about it. The arcade was where you went to feel grown up. No parents watching over you. Just you, your friends, and the games. You'd spend entire afternoons there, going home only when you ran out of money or when the sun started to set. Arcades started declining in the early 90s when home gaming systems got better. By 2000, most were gone. But for kids in the 80s, the arcade was magic, a place where skill mattered, where friendships were forged over cooperative games, where your allowance transformed into adventure. Here's a concept that will blow the minds of anyone under 30. In the 1980s, when you made plans with someone, you committed. There was no backing out, no last-minute changes, no "Sorry, something came up" text message. Let's say you arrange to meet your friend at the mall on Saturday at 2 o'clock. You'd agree to this plan on Monday or Tuesday, probably at school or over the phone. And from that moment, the plan was locked in. Written in stone. Come Saturday, you'd show up at the mall at 2 o'clock. And you'd wait. Maybe your friend would be late. You couldn't call to check. Maybe they'd forgotten. You had no way to remind them. Maybe they'd gotten sick. You wouldn't know until you got home hours later and your mom told you they'd called. So you waited. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. At what point do you give up? That was the eternal question. You'd wander around, checking different entrances, hoping you just missed each other. Eventually, you'd either find each other or go home disappointed. But here's what this taught you: reliability. If you said you'd be somewhere, you were there. Your word meant something because there was no easy way to back out. Flaking on plans required actual effort. You'd have to call their house and make up an excuse to their parents. Much easier to just show up. This extended to everything. If you were going to your friend's house after school, you'd tell your parents in the morning. That was it. No updates throughout the day. Your parents wouldn't hear from you until you walked in the door at dinner time. And they were fine with it. Getting picked up from somewhere? Your parent would tell you they'd be there at 5 o'clock. You'd finish whatever you were doing and be standing outside at 5 o'clock. If they were running late, you'd just stand there and wait. No text saying, "Running 10 minutes behind." You just trusted they'd show up eventually. This created a different relationship with time and commitment. Plans felt more solid. Showing up mattered. Being reliable was a character trait that people noticed and valued. Today, plans are fluid. "Let's hang out sometime" means maybe never. "I'll text you when I'm leaving" means plans don't really start until they start. The 1980s didn't have that luxury. Commitment was built into the structure of daily life. In the 1980s, kids walked to school. Alone. Starting in kindergarten. And nobody thought this was weird or dangerous. If you lived within a mile of your school, which most kids did, you walked. Your parents didn't drive you. There wasn't a carpool line stretching around the block. You just walked, often by yourself, sometimes with neighborhood kids you'd meet along the way. First graders would walk 3 or 4 blocks to school. By 3rd or 4th grade, you might be walking a mile or more. You knew the route. You knew which yards had mean dogs. You knew where the crossing guard would be. You figured it out. And walking home was even more independent. School ended at 3, and you'd walk home, let yourself in with your house key. The latchkey kid was a common 80s phenomenon, and you'd be alone for an hour or two until your parents got home from work. What did you do during that unsupervised time? Whatever you wanted. Watch TV. Eat snacks. Do homework. Call friends. Your parents trusted you not to burn the house down, and generally you didn't. Rainy days? You walked in the rain. Snowy days? You walked in the snow. The only time you'd get driven to school was if the weather was truly dangerous, or if your parents happened to be going in that direction anyway. This daily walk was your thinking time. Your decompression time. A buffer between school and home where you could process your day. You'd walk with friends, talking about who liked who, what happened at recess, what you were watching on TV that night. Compare this to today, where kids are driven everywhere, tracked by GPS, supervised constantly. The unsupervised walk to school seems insanely risky to modern parents. But statistically, kids were no safer then than they are now. Crime rates were actually higher in the 80s. The difference wasn't the world, it was the perception of risk. Walking to school taught independence. It taught navigation. It taught problem solving. If you forgot something at home, you had to deal with it. You couldn't call your mom to bring it to school. If you had a conflict with another kid on the walk, you handled it yourself. These daily acts of independence added up. By the time you were a teenager, you'd been making small decisions and handling minor problems for years. You'd built confidence in your ability to manage yourself in the world. Kids today are often more supervised but less confident. 80s kids were less supervised but figured things out. Different approaches, different outcomes. Summer in the 1980s meant one thing: being outside from morning until night. And the universal signal that your freedom was over? The street lights. You'd eat breakfast, go outside, and stay outside all day. Your parents didn't check on you. They didn't text you. They didn't need to know exactly where you were every minute. The only rule: be home when the street lights come on. What did you do outside for 10 or 12 hours? Everything. You played games that required no equipment. Kick the can. Capture the flag. Red Rover. Ghost in the graveyard once it got dark. You'd play with whoever was around, neighborhood kids of all ages, from 6 to 16, all playing together. You built forts in the woods. You explored creeks, catching crawfish and minnows in old coffee cans. You climbed trees, high up in the branches where parents couldn't see you and definitely wouldn't approve. You'd sit up there for hours, feeling like you'd conquered Everest. You had adventures. You'd find an abandoned house and dare each other to go inside. You'd build bike ramps and attempt jumps that should have resulted in way more injuries than they did. You'd play in construction sites after the workers left, climbing on equipment and exploring unfinished buildings. By today's standards, this was insanely dangerous. And yeah, kids got hurt. Broken arms, sprained ankles, stitches. But that was considered part of childhood. You got hurt, you healed, you were more careful next time. Maybe. The beautiful thing was the lack of structure. No organized activities. No sports practice or music lessons scheduled every afternoon. Just free play. Imagination-driven, kid-organized, totally unsupervised free play. You'd make up games with whatever was available. A stick became a sword. A cardboard box became a fort. 4 trash cans and a tennis ball became a baseball game. You didn't need expensive toys or equipment, you needed imagination and other kids. And when those streetlights flickered on, you'd feel a pang of regret. The day was over. But you'd had 12 hours of freedom, and tomorrow you'd do it all again. This kind of childhood is almost extinct now. Parks are empty. Streets are quiet. Kids are inside, on screens, scheduled and supervised. The 80s were the last hurrah of the truly free-range childhood, and those who lived it consider themselves lucky. Before Netflix, before streaming, before the internet, if you wanted to watch a movie at home, you went to the video store. And that weekly trip to Blockbuster was an event. Friday night. Your family piles into the car and drives to Blockbuster Video, or Hollywood Video, or your local independent video rental place. You walk in and you're hit with the smell of popcorn, carpet, and plastic VHS cases. The walls are lined with thousands of movies, organized by genre, their colorful cases calling out to you. You had to make a choice. A single movie. Maybe two if your parents were feeling generous. But you couldn't watch unlimited movies like today. You had to pick carefully. You'd wander the aisles, reading the back of VHS boxes, looking at the pictures. The new release wall was picked over. The good movies were already rented. You'd find the empty case for the movie you wanted and your heart would sink. Someone else got it first. So you'd adjust? You'd find something else. Maybe a movie you'd seen before but wouldn't mind watching again. Maybe something that looked interesting based on the cover, which was often misleading. Then came the membership card. Every family had a Blockbuster membership card. It was laminated and official. You'd hand it to the clerk, they'd scan your movies, and you'd walk out with your prize, a plastic clamshell case containing a VHS tape. But there were rules. The movie had to be back by a certain date, or you'd face late fees. These late fees were legendary, sometimes costing more than the rental itself. Forgetting to return a movie was a family crisis. Your dad would get the late fee notice in the mail and everyone would deny responsibility. And if the person before you didn't rewind the tape, you'd have to sit there, waiting for the VCR to rewind it before you could watch. The phrase, "Be kind, rewind," was printed on every rental. Most people ignored it. The video store was a social space. You'd see neighbors there. You'd run into friends from school and compare what you were renting. The clerks were like movie sommeliers. They knew everything and could recommend hidden gems. Choosing a movie felt important. You only got one, maybe two per week. You couldn't just switch to something else if you didn't like it. You were committed. So families would debate for 20 minutes, weighing options, trying to find something everyone would enjoy. Kids today will never know the thrill of finally finding the movie you wanted in stock. Or the disappointment of every copy being rented. Or the weird anxiety of racing to return a movie on time to avoid late fees. Blockbuster went bankrupt in 2010. Video stores are nearly extinct. But for kids in the 80s, the video store was a cornerstone of childhood, a place where movies felt precious because access was limited and choices mattered. And finally, the thing that defined 1980s childhood more than anything else: no internet. No smartphones. No tablets. No constant connectivity. Just you, the physical world, and your imagination. There was no internet to scroll. No smartphones with endless apps. No streaming services with unlimited content. You could watch TV, sure, but only what was on. And sometimes nothing good was on. So you'd lie on your bed and stare at the ceiling. You'd flip through the same comic books you'd read 10 times. You'd call friends, and they'd be busy. You'd wander around the house looking for something, anything, to do. And you know what happened? You'd get creative. You'd invent games. You'd build things. You'd draw, write stories, put on performances for your siblings. You'd go outside and find an adventure. You'd teach yourself to juggle, or to do magic tricks, or to play an instrument badly. Boredom was the crucible of creativity. When you have nothing to do and no easy entertainment at your fingertips, your brain starts generating its own entertainment. You learn to be comfortable with yourself, with silence, with the process of figuring out what you actually want to do. Modern kids rarely experience true boredom. There's always something to watch, something to play, someone to text. And while that's convenient, it might be robbing them of something important: The ability to self-generate entertainment, to sit with discomfort, to be creative out of necessity. 80s kids learn that boredom isn't the end of the world. It's just a starting point. A challenge. A blank canvas waiting for you to paint something on it. So there you have it, 10 things American kids did in the 1980s that shaped a generation. We rode bikes without helmets, disappeared for hours, navigated childhood without constant supervision, and somehow, most of us turned out okay. Was it all perfect? Of course not. Some kids got hurt. Some got lost. The lack of supervision wasn't ideal for every child. And there's plenty about modern childhood that's better: safer cars, better medical care, more awareness of mental health. But there was something special about 80s childhood. A freedom, an independence, a sense that the world was big and full of possibilities, and you were allowed to explore it on your own terms. For those of us who lived it, these memories are golden. For those who didn't, well, now you know what you missed. Thanks for taking this nostalgic trip with me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go watch some cartoons and eat cereal straight from the box. For old time's sake.